What is up, everybody? Welcome to the fourth episode of the Bestial Frenzies podcast. I'm here with my Bestial Frenzy. How are you doing today, Andy?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, my bestial frenzy, Theo?
Whoa, I'm doing quite good. I'm doing quite good. I'm a little eepy. It's because we're recording late at night because we got some exciting news to share with all these
That's
people.
exciting news. We were thankfully chosen to give a spoiler for set two.
Yeah, and it's a pretty cool one. It's a pretty cool spoiler. I'm gonna pull it up on the screen right now and we can talk about it for a bit because it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, we're not gonna do like a skit or anything. Our extras canceled on us, so we're just like, So we're just reviewing the card because that's what we're good at.
Yeah, all right. I've got it up now. Do you want to give it an introduction?
All right. So we have Rondites. How would you say that first word?
Either Erendite or Arondite.
I think Erendite sounds better. Erendite, Azure Blade.
Whoa.
I love it so much. I love it so much. So I'm just going to read what it does real quick. On enter, you may banish any amount of cards with floating memory from your graveyard. And for each banish this way, you get a refinement counter on it. And it gets +2 attack for each refinement counter. It costs 1. It's a Regalia weapon. It's a base 1/2. And the kind of unique thing about it is it's water.
Yeah. So I know they were mentioning in their their early product notes that there'd be more like elemental basic element regalia, and this is one of them. It's a really cool card. Um, so I don't think you mentioned the effect is a class bonus, warrior class bonus. Yeah.
It's a warrior class bonus. So you need to either play it with currently is Lorraine or level 3 Merlin, I guess. But the one I love, you play with Mordred because it makes all your attacks in your graveyard floating memory.
Yeah, I mean, the synergy with Mordred is definitely there, and also like this is literally the sword that he holds in his art. Uh, so I think it is implied that it is literally Mordred's sword, but I do think it's really cool that you can get a lot of value out of using your attack actions and just playing floating memory cards naturally, and then you pull the sword out, you banish like 5 floating memory, and then boom, it's an 11 damage sword. Like that's crazy. That's really cool.
11 attack sword, 11 damage sword. You can swing with twice.
Yeah.
Early game. Obviously this card has some weaknesses. If it gets Zephyred, you're in a bad place. If it just gets removed, you're in a bad place. But if you get 2 swings off with this, you probably win the game.
Yeah, and I think I wonder how possible it is to just like set up a deck where you literally just try to make this thing have like 25 attack and you just attack once with it. Like that's the whole point of the deck.
I was toying with a deck list for this deck that I was gonna share, but like it became clunky to share because like all the set 2 cards aren't on Sylvie and you play a lot of set 2 cards. Where it was literally just you play some mill cards, then you play a bunch of attacks, and you play a bunch of floating memory. So like besides like the 8 mill cards in your deck, the entire deck's floating memory. So by turn 1, you're a Spirit. Turn 2, you're a level 1 or Lorraine. Turn 3, you're a Mordred, and turn 4, you're swinging with this, and you're swinging for it on average. I was getting it's like 13 on turn 4.
It's pretty good. I think something else would be really cool with some of the new cards that we had just seen is the I'm forgetting the name, but the one that makes it so your domains don't have an upkeep cost, and that also is floating memory, so that synergizes there, and then you can play Avalon, and every single one of your water cards mills you by 2 more, and you just keep ripping cards off your deck, and then you just banish 10 plus 20, swing for game.
Another interesting non-Mordred interaction with this is you can pull this out with Ensoul.
Mm-hmm.
And so you pull it out with Ensoul on enter. Maybe you have 2 extra floating memory in your graveyard. A 5 attack weapon that swings by itself, and you swing with Lorraine. It does have other uses besides just being for Mordred.
Yeah, and I think the point about Ensoul is also like really good because a lot of times when you get to that point in the game, you don't really need your floating memory for much else. You might have like 1 or 2 just like left over from earlier in the game that you didn't use. Maybe you dungeon guided to 3. You still have like 2 savage slashes or something in your grave, and so like you just put this on the field, and like you said, you just banish those cards. You weren't using them anyways, and then now it's a 5 attack sword. That's a pretty good payoff.
pretty good. And when you pull it with Ensoul, you don't need to be water.
Yeah, so it gets the same little cheat into play effect as like Carwinin or the. I mean, yeah, that's the one. So I think it'll be interesting to see, what people do with it, where they take it. I'm really excited about this card. I think it's really cool.
No, I think it's so cool, and I think it's like this is the kind of like little card where this card is might not be, like a meta deck. It might not be a meta staple, but it adds into like that fun. I don't want to say Timmy space, but like like the casual space where it's like I want to just play my Mordred. I want to play my CSR Mordred, and I have a deck
Yeah,
that plays it. That's like you could win with it, absolutely. It might not be tier one, but you just get 6 floating memory in your graveyard. You get a 13 attack weapon. Say it's mording time, and you mord all over them.
you born all over the place. Yeah, and I think it is a card. It's like not very flashy, but it's a very good card. Like the text on the card is very good, and I also really love what they're doing with like the basic element Regalia. Just give each element sort of its own identity, really. That way, the material decks will actually start looking different between basic elements. So like just playing like Water Lorraine versus Fire Lorraine, you're not just gonna have the exact same material deck. Like now if you're just playing regular Water Lorraine, you could still put this in there and still get like a really big attack off early in the game. I think it'll be really, really, really cool to see
I
what people
agree.
do with this.
I do too. I agree.
Yeah. Let's get into some meta talk and enough new talk. Let's talk about the old stuff. And
I do want to thank Weebs the Shore for giving us a spoiler real quick. No, it wasn't
absolutely.
a skit, but I mean, very honored. We were put in very late. That's why we're the last video one. But really happy. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's talk about the meta. We had quite a big shakeup last week at our Discord tournament. So we had
We had
19 players, I believe, right? 19 was the number we were at. And I did a very like broad meta breakdown. I just kind of looked at the list. I didn't really go too far in depth, but I believe we still were sitting around 12 or 13 Lorraine, just like split between wind, fire. I think there was like one water. But Lorraine did not take it. Lorraine wasn't even in the quote unquote finals match, the two undefeated players like playing for the 4-0 spot. That match was actually Erupting Rye versus Arcane Rye. And Erupting actually ended up taking the undefeated slot. And I think, like, wow, what a shakeup, right?
we literally were like 2 weeks ago. Lorraine is too broken. Nothing can compete with it. Now, like where every other people were, we weren't. But now it's like I've been on the Rye train for a while, and Rye is really getting its time in the sun. People are back on like Erupting a little bit, but Arcane's like really shining. Erupting won this event because I think Erupting like is fairly good into Arcane because they need to get need to waste the turn, not like waste the turn putting a lantern in play, and Erupting Rye is just a little like a turn faster on that combo than Arcane is.
Yeah. I think just edging out that extra turn, it really, even if they get a lantern into play, like it buys them maybe a turn, but that means that they weren't getting like a crystal or a tome or even just leveling up. And like Arcane Rye really, really needs to hit 3 in order to pop off. And like once they hit 3, you're probably losing that game, but Erupting is very good at killing you before you get to 3.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's like it may not be the most consistent deck, but when it hits, it hits.
Yeah, and it is hard to play around when it hits. Like when that deck draws well, you're just like, man, I just lose. I remember I played a game at our paper locals a couple weeks ago, and this was game 3, so we were 1-1, and I'm going second, and the Erupting player turn 1 went increasing danger, and then like played like a creative shock or something. Like they did something else crazy, and then I was like, I'm pretty sure I just lose this game. It's like I haven't seen my opening hand yet, but I'm positive I lose. I had to get Lantern out as a spirit. Like that's how far behind I was, just because they had so many cards to work with. I was like, I'm just gonna lose. So, when that deck pops off, it's crazy.
I think it's really cool. I'm happy to see Rye, take more of the meta, and kind of get the respect it deserves.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've been a Rye fan since Even just playing the print and play decks, like I was always like, I'm gonna play Rye. I'm gonna play Rye. I just like the way the deck feels. I like the way it plays. It's really satisfying to play. You know, sometimes you say like Fireball for 22, and your opponent looks at you, and you're just like, they're like, water barrier, and you're like, fireball for another 22, and they're like, okay, yeah. It just feels good. It just feels really good to blow people up like that.
It's really cool, and I think that makes our way into our way too early set two meta preview.
Yes. Let's talk about it. We know what, like a third of the set, a third of the
I think
second
it's a
set.
little more than that. I think we're closer to like I think we're only missing like 10 cards right.
Are we? I thought it's like a 90
I
card
think
set, and I think we've seen.
I think we're only missing like one SR now, and I think it's like 4 URs.
Well, sure, but there's a lot of like commons and stuff in between. But
Maybe whatever. It's
yeah,
still
we
way too
can.
early to do it anyway because it's fun.
Yeah. Initial thoughts. Let's see. So some of the spoilers definitely seem like they're very good support for like Crux, Merlin, maybe like a control-y style play, like when we were first looking at the Majestic Spirit, the Regalia ally, that reads to me not as a Lorraine card. That's a Merlin card.
Feels like a Merlin card to me. I think Merlin is more of the control archetype for Crux
Yeah, and I
because you
think
draw every couple turns.
yeah, and I think Merlin will be able to take advantage of, and I'm thinking specifically Water Merlin because you've got that new card that gives one of your allies taunt. And I think Watermelon will really be able to take advantage of giving taunt to an intangible Geist and saying, nice attack damage. Like, you have to attack my Geist, it can't take attack damage. Tough.
And that's another thing about all of the cards we've seen is they all seem to slow down the game a lot. There's not really anything here so far that's like, oh, this speeds up the game super fast. It's all taking a step back, adding more counterplay, and making it to where like it's just a slower game. And I think most people will end up liking that
There'll be a
because
lot more back and forth.
yeah, it'll feel like there's more back and forth. It'll feels like there's more counterplayers, more you can do against your opponent. Where I think a lot of games right now just feel like two people solitaring against each other. It's fun. I think a lot of people might have like a little bad taste in their mouth if that's true.
Yeah, and I think it's especially true of like fire mirror matches where it's like if it's a fire deck versus a fire deck, you're kind of just like either who drew the better opening hand or like who hit their draw cards a little faster. Like
Right
when you
versus
get Yeah, literally. But once you get into even I've had some really good matches as just like Water Lorraine against even I was playing Water Lorraine against Wind Lorraine, even though we were both Lorraine decks, like it was a really back and forth match because we both have like some defensive tools, some offensive tools. Like those games are really, really fun when you get to just like go back and forth and interact with your opponent.
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially in like Lorraine matches that is more true than just Rye versus Rye. I misspoke a little bit there.
All right. What else do we got for our super early meta preview? So I think Water Crux Merlin control level 3 Merlin is going to be an archetype. Uh, I don't know how good it's going to be, but I think it's going to be a deck, and some people are really going to sit down and break it. I'm positive.
So so on that, I think we're going to hit like an interesting kind of triangle. What we have now, again, this is way too early, way too early. But I think Crux slows down a lot. I think how people are traditionally playing Crux right now, besides like Wind Ascension, I think it's slowing down because you have a lot more counterplay. There's the one card, it's like a Guardian action. Where it's 3, and you prevent 3 of every attack damage you're dealt that turn. A lot of people are going to be playing that, so that like counters Soul, that counters Rending Flames pretty well. So that counters a lot of like that ally aggro you might see in Wind too, like kind of just giving yourself an extra turn. I think Ascension with Wind, ripping all the cards out of their hands, still going to be really good. You know, with Prismatic Edge, I
Mhm.
think Ascension still drawing yourself a ton of cards in Control is going to be really good too, because instead of like, oh, I'm hitting all my combo pieces, I'm hitting all my counter pieces now, which I
Mhm.
think is better.
Yeah, because you can combo off over one turn, but if you hit all your counter pieces, you can spread that out over like the next 5, 6 turns and really just slow your opponent down so much until they run out of gas. Um,
You have the intangible guys you have with the taunt like that combo, so allies can't hit you after a certain point if you want. You have was it Blanche? prevent the
Hmm.
damage. The one, oh, she's so
Yeah,
good.
the fast ally. Yeah. And I think, like, when I first heard that card, I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like, you play it, it's kind of like, it's kind of like some of these other protection cards, like Veiling Breeze. But then I really looked at it, I was like, oh, that's permanent while she's on the field.
Yeah, it's not an on enter this turn. It is as long as she is on the field, you get
Yeah.
that, which is
So
crazy.
it's like, it's not taunt, but it's kind of taunt because your opponent still kind of has to sit there like, well, I have to get rid of that thing, otherwise you're going to take -8 damage because your whole hand's in your memory. So it's like, you still divert some attention. So even if she's only preventing like 3 damage for a turn, you're still, diverting attention. You're still saving yourself some life. And I guess she's really, really, really good card.
Yeah, and that you can still play in solo if you want. You can still play like all that stuff, but I think that's more grindy, and I think that's going to be better than what Crux we have right now, because I think the current Crux is going to get outshone by people playing slower decks and people playing
Mhm.
more counterplay.
Yeah,
Of that, I think Tithe is maybe there's a new Regalia that's a 1 cost, makes it to where players can't draw more than 3 cards every turn until you draw, so it replaces itself. I think that card is probably the most impactful card in this set.
absolutely. Yeah, that slows down a lot of, some of the decks that people are worried about being a little bit too powerful.
It really hurts Rye. Like they have to play like Spurn to Ashes and stuff, but it really hurts Rye. Um, it's good against Lorraine if you're afraid of them comboing off with Sword of Avarice and just drawing tons and tons and tons of cards.
Hmm.
And not really against Xander, not really against anything else, but specifically like Fire and that stuff, where they might be creative shocking twice in turn. All of a sudden, they can't do that anymore.
Yeah, it's like they get 1 creative shock plus their draw for turn, and that's 3 cards already. It's like the same thing with Lorraine. You get 1 Sword of Avarice plus your draw for turn. That's 3 cards. Like, yeah, like, you're really slowing them down. Like, some of the decks can combat it a little bit. I mean, like, creative shock is a fast spell, so you can draw some cards on your turn, then draw some cards on your opponent's turn. Rai can do a little bit of cheesing with the Enlighten counters. If you just stack them right, you can just draw some on your turn, draw some on your opponent's. But like, you're really forcing them to use their resources in a different way, rather than just like turbo into, I'm going to draw a bajillion cards and then I'm going to have all my combo pieces because I can't miss them after I've drawn 20.
And as that slows down, is like making people play even one more turn is enough to where like that's enough to just completely change the meta. All of a sudden, Fire might not be killing you on turn 5; they might be killing you on turn 6.
Mm-hmm. And
Or
the
like
extra turn is
they
huge.
have to have the answer, or they're just digging for it. So maybe it's turn 7, maybe it's turn 8. That's huge.
Mm-hmm.
Think Lorraine Crux. I think it's going to be cool. I think Xander is going to be the counter to that, because I
Yeah.
think a slower format in general favors Control Assassin.
Mm-hmm.
Assassin isn't restricted as much by can't draw more than 3 cards in the turn,
That's true.
because they don't generally do that.
As a Water Xander player, how scared are you of Morgan?
Of Morgan,
Morgan, yeah, the new one. She's got, I think, her level 2 plus effect is your opponents can't recover, so you
oh
won't be
oh,
able to heal anymore.
for some reason I was thinking Blanche again. I was like,
No, no,
uh,
no.
I'm not hating it too much, because not being able to recover will hurt you for the first turn you go into 3, maybe the second turn, assuming you don't have like Light Weavers. Usually, as Xander, you should have enough in your deck to kill allies. That's another reason you don't want to play the mill variant of that deck, is because you have so much space committed to the mill, you lose so much space to actually counter your opponent's cards.
Yeah,
Play mill,
that's
guys.
just true.
Don't do it. It's bait.
Unless you're playing Mordred with the new sword, in which case, play Bill. It's not bait in that deck.
Let's try words with a new sword. But for Water Xander, that might change. We still have some cards to see.
That's
Maybe
true.
we get something that you do want to play Watermill. But right now, with Xander Watermill, as someone who has played so many games of like, I'm one tricking that deck and has tons of success against Larian, tons of success. Do not play Mill. But again, going back to the conversation, the way too early meta prediction. If Control Lorraine gets good, not really killing you that fast, and that's where Xander thrives.
Yeah. If you can't kill Water Xander fast, that deck just takes over the game so easily. I think really like the only success that I've even ever had playing against that deck is just literally playing burn, where I'm like, I'm going to kill you turn 3, and if I don't, I probably lose this match. And you even get more tools to counter that with the new Guardian reaction. I think it's called Resolute Stand, is that one.
So, yeah.
Um, yeah, it's just like, there's just more counterplay. Games are not going to end on turn 3, and so I think these grindier decks that have the ability to like really force a long game are gonna pick up in popularity and in power level, really.
And I think you still have that, like, you still might get that triangle where Xander beats Lorraine, Lorraine beats Rye, and then Rye probably still beats Assassin, because you're still like have way less threats against Rye than Lorraine does. You just combo really well, and that gives them time to find the counters to your Tide, to find those Spurn to Ashes. Maybe that's Disintegrate. So
Mhm.
they're still probably going to kill you in one turn, to where your healing doesn't matter. To where Lorraine does not really have that option.
Speaking of Rye, I'm very hype on set 2 Rye at the moment. I think a lot of the cards are specifically slowing down like attack based damage, which Rye
Mm.
doesn't care about. And then that new card that actually got revealed earlier today, Voltaic Sphere. It's good as just like damage output. I think it's 2 cost, 3 damage, 5 of it's into an ally. And then that second effect, you can banish it from your grave to make the next arcane spell you play cost 1 less. But it is an arcane spell, so it also gives you +1 level when you banish it. So like you get to play it. It's kind of removal for allies that are doing a lot of damage to you, or it can just do 3 damage. And then it's also a resource, but also a level, so it gives you more damage. And it's just like, oh, I'm so excited. I think that's so cool.
Like for fire, when you're getting stuff in your graveyard with like hasty messengers or creative shocks, it's almost like a pseudo floating memory where
Yeah.
like it works after you're level 3, not before you're level 3.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm so hype on that card. I think it's really good. I think like some of the stuff is going to be a little bit hard for Mage to combat. So, like the first thing I think of is the Majestic Spirit in like Crux control. It gives your champion Spell Shroud, assuming that you're playing the Crux champion, because you have to activate the Crux cards. And so it's like, okay, I can't target champion with spells anymore, but I can still pretty easily put 10 damage into the Majestic Spirit. So it's like it forces my resources elsewhere, but I think Rye, and especially Fire Rye, has some pretty good tools to deal with big allies.
Hmm. I'm interested to see how that's just generally going to play out, because
Yeah.
it might just be like Polar Rain. It might just be like, this is a matchup I just can't win unless I pop off and they draw bad. I don't think that's going to be the case, because I think there's enough counterplay with like Tithe and everything to really slow Fire Rye down.
Hmm.
We might see like other archetypes emerge. Like there might be, maybe Fire Rye isn't what's played. Maybe it's Water Rye. Maybe we get some Wind Rye.
Yeah, it's true. I actually think like some of the I was testing a Windry build a while ago, and I'm off it for now. But the one thing it was really good against was ally based decks, because the wind spells give you a lot of just control over what allies are on the field, and you can push them around, you can move them back to hand, you can banish them for a turn, you can really just like mess with your opponent's strategy in that way. So I think if allies or ally based decks are really popular, then wind can definitely pick up some momentum for sure.
Zephyr the Majestic Spirit, then pop off.
True. Zephyr the Tithe, and then draw 100 cards. I think
So you play.
the one thing that we haven't talked about yet for our way too early meta preview is Tamer.
Oh yeah, we have not talked about Tamer at all. I almost forgot about it. Carl.
Carl?
Carl.
Carl the Dragon?
I'm interested to see where Tamer's gonna fit, because
Yeah.
like I have high hopes, because I think there's just like a path at the deck where you just turbo level 3, you Hymn of Gaia's Grace into Carl, and you just cruise. You just cruise.
Mhm.
The other part of me is like, Tamer still has that problem where if you miss that, then you just still kind of dead.
Yeah. I think one of the big things about Tamer right now is that like you have such a focus on your allies, your animals and your beasts. You really want to like buff them up, or let them sit on the board for a long time. Maybe if you're playing wind, you like cry for help, you like force attacks into them. But the issue is that they're just too hard to stick right now. It's like put a bunch of guys down, and then you're like, I'm gonna buff these guys up. It's gonna be great, and then they get cleaved over, they get blown up with spells, sometimes they just get ignored. Sometimes they're just not threatening enough to do anything. Um, but I do think there's some tools that really help the longevity of your creatures. The Regalia that is cleave protection is really good. The Song of Frost that just ends a combat phase, you could just blank the cleave card, right? So you have some counterplay in both wind and water. And then, I mean, obviously, Crawl is huge payoff. That card has so much text on it. It's just like, we'll give it all the keywords. Why not?
Yeah, and I think Gamer gets a lot. They get a lot, like you said. They get the card that blanks the cleave. Get the card. They get the Regalia. So much of this set so far, like, just anti-ally, where they're getting so much, and I'm just still not sure it's enough. And maybe I'm just wrong with this, and maybe I'm just gonna get destroyed by a Grey Wolf that's an 8/8 because of Green Slime and because of Young Beast Bonder. I'm just I'm still on the fence. I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to build it, but in this way too early meta prediction, I don't know where it's gonna go. I don't know where it's gonna fit.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the interesting thing about Tamer is that it effectively holds no spot in the meta right now, so it only has room for infinite improvement.
Only go up.
Yeah,
Can't talk bottom.
And I do think it's going to be a part of the meta. Is it going to be tier 1? Maybe. Is it going to be tier 2? I can't see it being lower than tier 2 if you can get Crawl on the field. So it all just depends on what's good and how it matches up into those things. But I do think the individual cards that it's getting are very, very good.
Yeah, and I just want to give a shout out to Weebs of the Shore real quick. GA, like, this set isn't big. This is 90 cards, but man, do they make every card count.
Mm-hmm.
Like 90 cards, like almost every single one, I'm pretty sure is like playable. So there's no duds. You can't open a pack and get a dud. At least now. We will see when the meta actually develops. But right now, like, just previewing it, I feel like every card's a hit in terms of playability, and that's really hard to do.
I mean, we'll see how long I want to pay 3 for a level counter. But other than that, everything's great. Everything's great. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how much more we can predict a meta when we only have so many of the cards available. But I think there's going to be a good number of new decks popping up, alterations to current decks to give them a better grind game, and I just think it's going to like feel like a totally different game to play once all these slow cards come out.
I agree, and I'm excited. Set 2 win set 2.
Set 2 win spoiler.
Let's set 2. Set 2 is a little bit away. Let's talk about set 1. Let's go to our market manipulation section.
Yeah, tell me about it.
And all that stuff. So first off, let's talk about the expected value of altar boxes. The expected value of altar boxes as of 3 hours ago is $142.29.
Whoa.
That is the expected value are expected on average going to hit after opening a box of altar. And there is, some skew there. Like, I think this week it was $16 of that value was tied up in whether you hit a CSR or not. But, all in all, it's really strong. Big winners this week. Beseech the Wind did have some sale at $40. We'll see if it keeps that. Beseech the Wind is very strong. People love materializing stuff. We see that with the price of Dungeon Guide. No other really big winners this week. We did see some ultra rare buyouts, to where as it's sitting, like, the market price for GCR, it hasn't moved much. But the lowest listed is 60, and there were a couple sales at 60. Someone bought out Yeti Gaming of all of our ultra rares, so we were out of alter URs for a little bit. The big ones that seemed to be targeted on TCG Player were Tome of Sacred Lightning and Luxera's map, where we started to see some sales. Before they were like $3, URs were cheap, and now they're closer to like the $7-9 range. So it's interesting because people need those cards. If you're playing level 3 Xander, you're playing Luxera's map. Tome of Sacred Lightning, people are still a little iffy on. I think that card's great. I
I
think you
think that
should
card's
play that
great.
card if you're an Arcane Rye, but some people are back and forth on that one. But as we get to set two, excuse me, I think that will be more established. Didn't have time this week because we have the spoiler, and I didn't want this to be 2 hours long. I do want to do a deep dive on the quantity of altar foils sold, because a lot of the value in the expected value of these altar boxes is tied up in foils right now. It's not actually a majority. The majority is in non-foils, taking up about $82. The remaining 60 is tied up in your foils, including your CSR in your foils. So I do want to take a look to see how many of those foils are actually selling, how liquid those truly are. But we'll cover that next week, so stay tuned.
Ooh,
Um,
stay tuned.
I did do. Speaking of liquidity, this is a very rough number because the liquidity on first edition singles very low compared to altar, like super low. But if you just go by lowest listed, and again, I don't recommend necessarily anyone take this advice, but I wanted to present this number because I think it's really cool to see, like, if you open a box of first edition, what you're kind of expecting to hit. The expected value of first edition is over $500, right? And I did put my money where my mouth is, and I opened two first edition boxes. All right, we didn't seal. I got too excited. We'll do a sealed another day. I actually, like, we had some first edition boxes because they're going for about $350 right now. But the expected value is about 500, and I did hit like a $500 box. So that was great.
What was in your $500 box?
Hit a foil Ghost of Pendragon, and then just another
Cool.
good stuff. I did hit a Grand Crusaders ring, which have actually been selling for about $150. But I think the foil first editions is a very interesting market because
Mhm.
it's not necessarily that they're not liquid. It's people don't really have any listed. So earlier today we sold a foil Reckless conversion for $200, and I think a lot of that is, I mean, I had some other sales where it was like rares for like 150. But, we'll see how that develops over time as the game gets like ages. I think it's kind of fine to look at that number because it's a seller's market for first edition foils. If you have a foil reckless conversion, you might be the only one on the market with a foil reckless conversion. You can kind of name your price, and 200 isn't too much. I think 200. I have another one. I'm gonna probably post it at like $250. See what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all wild numbers. It's crazy that, like, as time goes on, the EV of Ultra keeps actually creeping up. Like, it's slowly gone up and up over the weeks. It's really crazy.
Slightly more than last week. And sorry, this is my like section to ramble because I love the numbers because that's all I do for a job at Yeti Gaming.
'Cause you're a
But
nerd.
it's really cool. A couple little market quirks I do want to talk about. As I mentioned, some alters, ultra rares, URs. They ultra rares. They gotta be ultra rare. Second guessing myself. The URs. We're just gonna call them URs. Creeping up. We're not seeing that with foils. So the cheapest UR foil right now is $50 for Majestic Spirit's Crest. The other ones are like 75 to 95, and then Grand Crusaders brings like 400. But Majestic Spirit's Crest people just don't want. I don't know why. And then people have discovered there are more copies of Dungeon Guide than just Altar. We
Hmm.
actually haven't had an Altar sale of a Dungeon Guide in the last week on TCG Player. Last one was 6-1.
Interesting.
But prelude decks are moving. And I think it's because prelude decks are a little cheaper, which there are a lot more prelude copies of Dungeon Guide. People saw how expensive Dungeon Guides were, and they started opening their prelude decks. So there became a lot more, kind of a little bit of a race to the bottom there. But those have been moving. So Dungeon Guides are moving. The market is still strong. It's just there are four variations of Dungeon Guide right now. You got the promo, first edition, altar, and prelude. But people are going to gravitate to the new one, or the cheap one.
Yeah. And I think I saw an interesting point in a Discord somewhere because I've seen a couple times people be like dungeon guides short printed. No, there's not enough dungeon guides, and it's like we have the pop reports for this game. That's literally not true.
Actually, more dungeon guides than any other card.
Just because of the number of printings. But something interesting about the Altar dungeon guides specifically is that like a lot of them actually live in silver packs that aren't opened yet. Because silver packs are all rares, and I saw someone mention that it's like it may seem like there's not as many Altar dungeon guides because there's a lot of silver packs, which means that a good chunk of those Altar dungeon guides are waiting for people to open them from silver packs. And I know that they're in there because I've opened like 6 dungeon guides from silver packs over the past month.
This guy, every time he opens a pack, it has a dungeon guide. I think every week he said a dungeon guide. Theo's insane.
Yeah, I think if either for my entry pack or for my prize packs over the past month, I've hit. I think it was 6 dungeon guides out of silver packs specifically. So every time I'm like, it's just a silver pack. What could happen? It's like, oh, it's a dungeon guide. That's the best one. All right, next.
If you want a chance to win event packs, get
Whoa.
weekly,
Whoa.
a weekly webcam Discord event where we give a whole event kit away every week. That is 48 silver packs equally distributed among all participants, and then 16 gold packs distributed to all 3 1s and 4 O's. We play 4 rounds every week, so we're not there all night. But we have like 18 to 20 people plus every week, and hope you can make it. Get some, it's a fun environment, it's really casual, and you get silver packs no matter how well you do. I see you there.
True. What a phenomenal segue. That was masterful. You're getting better at these.
Plug it in somewhere.
That was so good. Yeah, I mean, I think that's most what we got for this week. Obviously, a lot of it's tied into we're in spoiler season. Like all the new stuff is really cool. It's MORDIN time, etc., etc. Yeah. Also, oh yes, if you play in our Discord tournaments and you win, we will feature your deck here on the podcast. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about how good you are of a player, maybe for winning with a deck that's not named Lorraine.
It's true, and we always have the link in the description we're gonna have that erupting eye list in the description. And thank you all for coming, seeing our spoiler, listening to me talk about numbers of how great this game is doing in terms of booster boxes and the expected value for opening. Because man, do I love opening packs!
Oh God, it's just so fun. You can't not have fun opening packs.
But where is it?
Oh, he slapped himself. Hey yo, look at that.
That price is wrong. That's a really old price, but it's MORDIN time.
It's MORDIN time. It's MORDIN time, baby.
All right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you all for listening.
Have a good rest of your day. Have a good one, guys.